Hi, I'm attorney Eric Lewis with Lewis Legal Services in Indianapolis. Today, I have an update with the new national means test numbers that were recently released by the Department of Justice, and those numbers go into effect on April 1st, 2024. The means test is used in bankruptcy to determine eligibility for Chapter 7 and how much you are expected to pay back on your debts in Chapter 13 cases. In Chapter 7 cases, in which the majority of the debt is consumer debt, it helps determine eligibility based on your current monthly income and your expenses, and comparing those with the state average family income values that vary by household size. In Chapter 13 cases, it also helps determine what we call the commitment period, whether your Chapter 13 repayment plan has to be a minimum of 3 years or 5 years in duration, and how much you can reasonably pay back on your debts in that determination of disposable income. Below, I have linked where you can go to find these numbers, not just for Indiana specifically, but for all the states and jurisdictions. Okay, so let's get into it and take a look at these numbers. So, effective April 1st, 2024, for consumer bankruptcy cases, these are the new numbers. The last time these numbers were revised in November of 2023, the sort of big surprise at the time was that they all went down across the board for the first time since 2019. Typically, we see marginal increases when they update these figures every 6 months, give or take. So what we're seeing here is basically a return to where we were for the most part of 2023. So if you're an individual filing bankruptcy, your debts are primarily consumer debts, and no applicable exception applies to you, such as current service in the military, for example, where you wouldn't have to take the means test. Then without those exceptions, you have to take a means test analysis. And the means test looks at your current income for the 6 calendar months prior to the calendar month in which you file your bankruptcy case. When we average that income and annualize it, the question becomes, where does that average put you in relation to these cutoff numbers of median household income? If your average is below these numbers, then there's no further analysis in terms of means testing. If your average is above these numbers, then further means testing is required to look at your specific expenses and judge your specific ability to pay back your debt, even if you're just paying it back in part. On the expense side of the analysis, the means test uses certain standardized numbers that we call the national living allowance, which is based on your household size. There are other expenses, of course, that you can take in a means test for Chapter 7 or a determination of disposable income for Chapter 13 cases, numbers that are unique to you, numbers such as, whatever certain amount of charitable contributions you make, retirement contributions, what you pay for life insurance or health insurance. But some of these numbers, as you can see, they're set by law by these national living allowance numbers. There can be some deviation for necessary expenses, but these numbers represent basically the expectation. And these numbers apply to all consumer bankruptcy cases, not just those for cases filed in Indiana. So for means test analysis for eligibility, determination of disposable income in Chapter 13, or just the general reasonableness of your budget on Schedule J to your bankruptcy paperwork, the court looks at these numbers as a guide to determine if your deductions from income are both reasonable and necessary. Now, what's interesting to me about these numbers is while the median household income showed that slight increase, the means test numbers for typical household expenses aren't changing, and those are going to remain the same numbers that went into effect in May of last year. And it's amazing how these numbers have remained stagnant for so long, given the fact that we all know that the cost of everything has gone up so much and continues to go up. The Consumer Price Index, recently released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, shows us that the cost of living continues to steadily grow due to inflation, and there's really no end in sight. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, please contact my office. If you want to stay up on developments in bankruptcy law and other related things, please click subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.